Hi, I'm Bailey with Antiquaria, and today in our Stamping Basics series, we will be covering one of our favorite and most used techniques, embossing. I think that embossing is the best way to turn your stamped print into something high-end and stunning. The process we will use is very similar to how print shops create textured thermography. With this technique, you can create wonderful variations of light ink on dark paper, textured prints, and even gold on gold. While the process is a bit more time consuming and requires additional materials, it is very easy and the results are totally worth it. So let's get started. You'll need to get some paper, some envelopes, preferably dark to make a really good impact. I have some fig colored cards, some black A7 envelopes, and some gold A2 envelopes to start with. You'll also want to get your stamp pads and some embossing powder and your handy heat tool. Of course, you'll need some stamps. And we always first practice on scratch paper, so I've got some of that as well. So to get started, I'm going to do a white embossing on the black paper. So I'm going to test it out on the black paper. I'm going to be using a Frost White Color Box stamp pad. And first, I'm just going to get this inked up and do a test print of this to make sure that I'm getting full coverage. Oh, looks perfect. Okay, so I'm ready to move on to embossing. I'm going to get my embossing powder. Careful with this, don't sneeze or it'll be everywhere. You'll want to get a scrap piece of paper to lay down under your work so that you catch any extra powder. Okay, I'm going to ink my stamp again. I'll stamp it on my scrap piece of paper. Very quickly, I will sprinkle over a dusting of the embossing powder. I'm going to tap this around a little bit just to make sure it gets covered. And then gently, I'll tap it off of the paper. So now I have it coated. I'm going to set it aside and I'm just going to clean my area. So this is why we have scratch paper. We can just pour that excess off back into the bottle. Okay, I'm not sure if you can notice, but I see there's a little bit of dust left from the powder. What I'll do is I'll grab a paintbrush. It can be smaller than this as well. And I'll just brush off any extra patches of powder that I may have because those will solidify in the heat. Give it a little blow. And now we're ready to heat set. Okay, so this will be noisy, so I'm not going to talk during it, but you'll turn this on and you'll just watch for the powder to solidify. So I held my heat tool about 2 inches above the embossing. I now, after it's cooled down, I have a beautiful white raised print of my stamp. So pretty. So basically, you'll just follow the same technique for the return address on the actual envelope flap. So you make your print, you get your powder, making sure we're doing this on top of a piece of scrap paper, shift it around to coat, tip it off, carefully. Brush off any excess. Perfect. So now I'm ready to heat set. Very, very quick. Next, we're going to use the fig paper with gold ink and gold embossing powder. You'll just ink your invitation stamp with the gold ink. Center your stamp. I normally just eyeball it. Press it down to make the print. Okay. Sprinkle the gold powder over the image. Tap it around, just like we did on the return address. Tip it off. Okay, and then there's a little bit of extra. You can also lightly blow, so you see me do, to get the stray powder off. You can even go in with like an even smaller brush if there's some that's loose in the design. Okay, so once you've done that, put the gold powder back in the jar. Get your heat tool. Okay, well, you get the idea. It takes a little bit of time. I have a finished invitation right here. It's gorgeous. It's just shimmery and gold, and it really pops out against that fig card. Lastly, I'm going to show you what gold on gold looks like. It is such a pretty effect. Okay, so I'm going to use a return address stamp. Actually, the same one we used on the white. Ink it in gold. Center it. Make your print. Pour your powder on. sure you do this over a piece of paper. Tap it around, tip it off. Okay, clean it up a little bit. The gold on gold, much harder to see the dust, but you can just clean it up a little bit. Okay. And then you just watch the gold turn from matte to shiny. Perfect. So with this technique, the gold on gold, you get such a gorgeous, luxurious, high quality image. I just don't think it can be beat. Just a real quick thing about embossing. When you're embossing, we've found that it's best to match your stamp pad to your powder color as closely as possible. Not only will this make the print more opaque, it will also keep the image form. If you just happen to miss a little bit of the image with the powder, you'll still be able to get a good impression. That's embossing. I think it's a great technique. We use it all the time, and I hope that you love it as much as we do.